I ate the food on the dining table as I stared at the monk lying in the corner of the room. If my dinner wasn't disturbed by his entrance, I would have considered the meal to be delicious and give compliments to the chef, whoever he or she was. I had placed the monk's armor plate on his head, then covered the blood surrounding him with a blanket. I didn't want to lose my appetite, but there's really no helping that when there's a dead body in the room. All the drastic measures I took so that my eyes wouldn't be morbidly observing the corpse was in vain since I was still imagining it in my head. I had thought of trying to get rid of him entirely from the room, but then I discarded the idea when I considered that I was going to leave traces of blood everywhere. I suppose that would ruin my appetite even worse. I was never a heavy eater anyway, but I had to eat. I didn't want food to go to waste. Also, I wasn't sure when my next meal was gonna be. Even the meal I was currently consuming probably wasn't even for me, but I'm eating it anyway since there's nobody else here to eat it, with the monk being dead and all. I still waited a while until I noticed that I was beginning to starve when my hands were trembling while I covered up the monk. I hadn't eaten a proper meal since I got to this place that I don't know much about. I woke up at the meadows, then went to the woods. What was my last memory before I got here? Anyway, I should probably give the monk a proper send-off since he did let me stay in this cabin of his. How should I do that? Maybe a burial or cremation would do. I wasn't sure to choose between either of that two. Another option was to let him drift in the currents of the river, but I don't think I could carry him all by myself to the river. I just don't understand why he didn't warn me or something. Sure, the monk couldn't speak my language, but he could have at least given me some sort of heads up on the events that were to ensue. Now that I think of it, did he even meant for me to come here? He had just finished meditating, got up, then left the riverside. I assumed he was going to lead me to either a monastery with other monks he lived with, or a cave he resided alone. I didn't expect him to be staying in a cabin. The monk didn't stop me from following him, but he wasn't really inviting as I entered the cabin when I looked back at it again. He may also have been pretending to not know my language so that I wouldn't bother him, but realized that plan of his, if even that was his plan, failed since I still followed him. I was sure that he wasn't a native speaker of my language since the books in the cabin didn't have any writings using my language. But that didn't stop me from having suspicions that he could actually speak in it. I remember about the camera I found at the meadows before. I think I'll take a few photos of this place before I leave. At least as a memento, if not for more practical uses. Maybe I could use the pictures as references for other people in the woods here when I go meet and ask them about this monk. Did he really not know the language here? How did he live in this country without knowing the languages of the natives? Then I remembered I might not even be in my own country anymore. I shuddered. I hope that wasn't the case. I've heard stories of people losing their identification documents abroad, then living in the streets because they can't get home. I need to make sure I don't be like those people. I need to get back home. I finished the food on my plate, but there was still a lot of leftovers remaining. I placed a woven rattan dish cover on the food that was left. The food will get cold, but it won't hurt to keep them instead of just throwing it away. I then got up to take pictures of the place. It could be useful later. I don't know why I keep saying that as if it was for sure to be true. I had kept the cane I made when my legs were injured, even though my legs are better now, thinking that it would also be useful later. Maybe I shouldn't be keeping unnecessary stuff with me just because I think it was going to be useful, when I don't have any basis for saying that. And as for now, I really have no reasons to keep the cane. So I added it to the burning fire, which was currently beginning to dim, but it began sparking again. I then realized that might not have been a good idea. I didn't want to attract attention, but what I just did right there was the complete opposite of that. Making the fire brighter again was going to make people suspicious. I had planned to go meet other people, but I wasn't comfortable with the idea of them knowing my presence right now when I'm not ready. But I also didn't want to completely extinguish the fire since I wasn't going to be able to light it up again. I mean, it wasn't me who lit it up at the first place. I decided to just let the fire do its thing. I proceeded to take a look throughout the monk's cabin. The place wasn't really that big for me to search through, but still, I hadn't really seen much of it since most of my time was spent reading that children's book about the selfless hero, or rather, looking at the illustrations early in the day. I still can't believe I got lost in that book so much so that I didn't realize what had been happening around me. I mean, there's so many weird things happening to me all at once that I just can't make sense of it all. I looked through the cabin around it for something noteworthy, maybe a flag of the country that the monk had really originated from. Though I didn't find a flag, I found several maps. They were drawn on paper that were now brown as if coffee had been spilt on them. And that could be the case, though I suspect it was due to the old age of the paper. None of the atlases looked as if they were world maps. Or maybe they were just not using the Mercator projection. Maybe I'm going to find a treasure map that's lying around this place. I've been spawned in, then get sent on an adventure to find that set treasure. Am I just going to be sitting here reading maps? Maybe I'll continue this story at a later time.